Hey guys, whoops, sorry about that. Okay, so Frankie B from Frozen Sand, ta-da, with a long over update as to the behind the scenes going on and motivating ourselves forward to releasing 4.x on the Intech 3 engine over to Unreal 4 of the game Urban Terror. And I thought, being a pro, since it's been a while since I've done one of these, I thought I'd take the opportunity to officially announce that, yes, Orbital has been put on the rack as one of the map conversions that we're wrangling up as to inclusion in the Resurgence version of Urban Terror. It seems to be quite a popular map, and there was a lot of hoopla that when I finally got around to making the decision that, yeah, okay, I'll go ahead and start setting it up. As yet, one of the many that I'm processing through. Hopefully it will be completed as part of the delivered version of Urban Terror on Steam. So, well, I guess that's enough plugging for now. And if you want to keep up to date, we are also doing a media dump on our website that also includes the efforts that are being done as far as custom map makers goes, to give them a kind of a shout out to, as well, as they are slowly but surely moving off the Radiant platform and over to using Unreal 4. And it's quite exciting because they are also in the process of converting a few maps themselves. So we've offered them the opportunity to do their own content dump in our forums, and I'll throw down on the bottom in the description here a link to that topic forum, so you can hopefully check it out on a daily basis, which of course helps out Frozen Sand as far as development funds goes, yada yada yada. And yeah, things are starting to, let's say, pick up a little bit of gravitational force. It's they're working steadily towards making the game at least alpha ready for general testing. I don't know what the scheduling for that is like. It's going to be done in stages and so forth, as to initial invites, as well as obviously going with at some point an open alpha at some stage. And good news is Happy Days also working on a dedicated Urban Terror plugin that will give you access to all the different entities that you would like to place in your maps. So we're still more or less on the building maps based on the idea that, hey, a map is a map is a map. So it's going to be it's going to be a really nice ease into phase where the map makers who's making their own custom maps can if they're making something for, say, game X, and they just say, hey, I want to also include Urban Terror in the mix, and we can supply you with the entities and give you guidance as to the setups and that have been decided. Like, for example, level streams, we're going to play somewhat a critical part in making the a map that is just a map into something that is ready to be used in Urban Terror, no matter what game type that you want to set it up for. So as the case in the past, it was kind of, well, you had to make a URT version, you had to make a bomb version, and then you had to put this and put that into it. The single map can be reconfigured on the fly depending on how you need it to be configured for a given game type. So the standard game types should be representative as to, like, Team Survivor, for example, or bomb mode, or CTF. Of course, we have to have that. As far as Urban Terror, as its genre is focused more in the team play environment, but You know, it'd be nice to have one-on-one type of games and what have you. So we want to leave that kind of open as an option to the map makers as to what kind of gameplay types that they want to include in their map, even if it's like one-on-one deathmatch, or even if it's you know a unique game type that they want to include and develop on their own, and make that kind of that kind of accessibility available in a let's say a much more structured format. So we're not running afterwards and saying, okay, zombie mode, for example, became very popular as a server-side mod. But unfortunately, every time we did an update, of course, the zombie mode would break. So we're inclined to at least look at the possibility of allowing third-party submissions for game types and what have you, due to the flexible licensing that is available to us. So we're keen on the idea of having a lot more third-party community effort involved as to implementation of ideas that would be beneficial to basically people who are interested in a certain area. So jump mapping, for example, was something that was totally invented by the jump map community based on what they actually had available to them. So they did, and never really broke any maps because there was nothing really there to break. They were just taking advantage of the game physics that were basically stock in the map. So it would be nice to be able to accommodate them for any special types of entities that or controllability in their game type that would hopefully make it equally as popular as it is now. These guys are wacky crazy with what they want to do, and me for one, I've always been kind of impressed that they were able to do their own thing, so to speak, without having to actually have any kind of accommodation whatsoever. So we want to kind of blow that kind of stuff up to make it more of a community type effort. Kind of like Linux is community based. Except for that we do obviously have to have a higher degree of control to keep the asshats and cheaters out, so to speak. So anyways, back to topic on hand, of course, is yes, I feel comfortable in saying officially that Orbital will be added to the lineup, and give you kind of a cruise through to see how I got kind of get things set up. Now, the cool thing is, of course, after all this time, the technology has finally caught up to what we wanted to do, and the ability to extract the information from the BSP as to creating correct to 4.x scaling, as well as if we wanted, we could certainly do a one-to-one conversion of the original map as it was built for 4.x. So, or going back in time as far as BSP technology has been around. So it's a cool idea, concept, something that I'm interested in maybe trying someday, is just doing a complete one-to-one conversion and leaving it at that. So Orbital would look like Orbital as an option, but of course there's always the temptation to kind of improve the visuals, as long as it doesn't hinder the playability as to speed and performance and what have you. So yeah, eye candy is a good thing, but it shouldn't it should not impact performance to decay the feel of the movement that obviously 4.x is capable of, in favor of just adding more eye candy, which really can hinder the playability that everybody is familiar with. That's the rule of the game here, so to speak, is that the mechanics and the gameplay and everything has already been well established, and what we hope to accomplish is a parity using the original 4.x design as to overall feel and so forth. So if you're going from the older version with high playability over to the new version, as in the former Resurgence, you'll quickly come to the realization that that it is still the game Urban Terror, which we all know and love. So, anyways, scooting around here, I've done some basic placement of some ready-made components as to filling up the need to fill up space. But there always, of course, needs to be some kind of customization. Now, I'm a favor of the idea of buying prefabricated elements as long as they do fit within the environment. But that's not always the case. You'll never get a perfect 100% obviously fit between what it is you buy and how it needs to fit in a conversion that needs a strong representation of a one-to-one of the original. It should also be noted that we take no real credit as to the development of these maps, but rather, the original map maker will get all the credit as the main marquee as to this map being released. So it'll be a map, this will be Orbital by such and so and so, and then we'll just take credit for the conversion. So that has always been the nature of Frozen Sand. Is of course we are a group of artists at heart, and we play by the fairness of rules, in that just because I make a forged Mona Lisa doesn't mean that, hey, I painted the Mona Lisa. So be assured that this has been verified by a lot of the different map makers, that they're actually makes them keen on the idea. That's really what all they want. They just want to maintain the credit for the original. And of course, as anybody who's made a map before, is that the layout is the thing, not just a bunch of painted boxes. So we're going to be very, very, very guarded about conversions as far as somebody wanting to duplicate a map that's available in the current version. Now, obviously, if the all of our maps basically has had some indication from the original mapper that they're really keen on this idea that that their efforts is going to live on, so to speak. So if you, as a third-party interest, want to make a map, by all means go out and find out that's not included in the current line-out. By all means, feel free to go out, have a chit-chat with the original artist, see if they want, if they're keen on the idea of letting you try to update their layout, at least, to and assure them that they'll get their full credit and what have you. And to date, I have yet to run across anybody that wasn't open to the idea. As once again, credit should be given where credit is due, and if not, then we'll probably refuse to well, whatever form of distribution that we go with, would refuse to actually include it as part of the official channel, so to speak. So we want to make sure that, of course, our our community is very, very, very important to us as we have grown older, so to speak. In that it is really their effort that has allowed this game to have survived the past 18 years now. So we obviously want to make it to 20 and then beyond, maybe another 20 years after that. Who knows? And it's only through the community effort that this is going to be possible, simply because there is no bottom line to this game as to rhyme and reason why it should continue to succeed. Nobody around here makes dime one off of this game, so the only motivational factor really is pure sheer love of A, the community, and B, continuing to have a game that we enjoy playing ourselves. So that kind of gets through the mushy stuff, I guess. So as to maybe a little bit of info behind the construction here is that okay, originally how I started processing this level, this conversion, is by simply doing the BSP conversion. You can head over to custom map makers and plug again, and they've sort of some of the new conversion tools that have been made available over the years, it's a very quick and painless process of being able to score even the map objects that are placed into the map that was difficult, if not impossible, to extract before. So something like what was the first one? Casa was one of the first maps to actually start the conversion process, which was really difficult. For one thing, getting the UV maps to line up properly. A lot of missing map objects had to be duplicated and replaced. So when you were starting out, you didn't have the same condition that Orbital was in. In this case, is the most recent conversion process of having all the proper UV mappings and all the faces properly in place. You know, even though the geometry is originally built as a BSP, it's kind of messy. So it needs you know, if I was to just kind of drop this in as a playable map, I don't see any problems with it with affecting efficiency, except it just, you know, it's just ugly geometry, and it'd be questionable whether it's not efficient or not. So as you can see here, what's left as I've been working through it, a lot of the areas that I've been working on is slowly but surely, but gently, I guess you might want to say it, being replaced with a little bit more advanced geometry, as well as keeping track of any kind of performance issues that arise by this replacement. But as I discovered over time, you know, geometry is not the problem. The problem is over complex shader effects, which has historically been a problem in IdTech 3 anyway. So, you know, a lot of the stuff that you've learned as being cautionate about is also represented even in a high performance package like Unreal 4. Oh boy, no, I'm not going to start again. I am, suffering from a bit of a cold, and of course the weather's starting to change, which means of course my hay fever or whatever it is going to start to kick in. So this is what we originally have still left of the regional Orbital. Of course, we're going to get a fancy dancy cargo ship in here. Maybe I'll get one of the guys over at CMM to be nice and do a really cool modeling job. They're coming up with some, you know, they got some of the 3D modelers are starting to show up and showing off their skills, and that's been rather impressive and inspirational. To see that they're jumping on that bandwagon, slowly but surely jumping on that bandwagon, and learning their own techniques. So there are people hanging around. They do have a Discord channel, so you can probably go over to their website and get an invite, which is has a surprisingly enough a fair number of people hanging out. Now I don't know if they're all interested in map making, but it would just be nice as a resource. I mean, map making is just not about pushing buttons and what have you. You know, anybody could basically sit down and figure it out in a few days how to make an environmental space that has walls and paint job and what have you. But construction, what would make for a good CTF map, what would make for good for a bomb map, is all about the layout. That's what sells the map. So, you know, even the simplicity of, say, an uptown or a turnpike benefits from this type of layout system, because that's it just, you know, there's no explaining it. You can't explain in any kind of video game of what people hate and what people like based on, but simplicity seems to be somewhat of a guide. And custom map makers obviously has a lot of people around there hanging out that has years and years of experience of building these types of environments. So you know, it's like, for example, if you go to racing school, you probably, you know, if you're lucky, Mario Andretti is kind of hanging out. And is he still alive? I don't know. I should check that before. So, you know, Mario Andretti might be hanging out, and you can get some really good advice and build up your street credit a little bit. And of course, they're just a fun group of people just to kind of hang out with and talk shop with. You know, That's where I learned most of my stuff. I just would kind of hang out places like Polycount and oh, I don't know. Well, there's not as much as I used to. These different places, you know, Blues News used to have a hangout joint, and they always had these little places where the pros would kind of hang out. Like we'll go over to Polycount, and you're always running into guys that are working in actually directly in their industry and with big name studios, and they kind of do tend to hide the fact a little bit, and some not so much. But anyways, you can get some good advice in that area too as well. Now back onto our conversion idea here. As I start replacing elements, I just simply go over it and put them into development blocks to kind of match up my 3ds Max file as far as layouts. So here's 3ds Max, and I have different elements and things that I can build. So this kind of matches closely to the layout that I've already built, that combines that specific area into different blocks. So you can look over here. Here's all the blocks that corresponds to what I have set up over in Unreal 4. You also notice that these blue frames here, these buckets here, these are actually collision objects. Now I'll talk just quickly over this and leave it for you know, if there's some interest in this in what I'm doing here, I can always sort of update it. Okay, so we're going through the autosave process. I don't know why, but the autosave is always longer than doing a normal save. So instead of waiting that out, let's just kind of switch back to Unreal 4 for a sec. Let's know. Okay, so let's cover a little bit of what that box, those little blue boxes represents. Is basically a volume space that represents the collision of that area. So let's turn these back on again. I can always turn them off. You know, I've got the map objects. I like to put all my lighting stuff in a master layer lighting, because then I can, say for example, put all the lighting I need, put it into the block space for that element, and then shut everything off, and then do a final build, a lighting quality, a production lighting build, and it just zips through the lighting of that. Say for example, this area, I'll put I need some special lighting done in here. Let's turn on G here to see what I got so far. So I have this lighting element, which I believe is part of this block. So if I turn off that block, what block is it? Block 5? No, it's still in the lighting layer. So I can move this over into block 5, all the different lighting elements that I need to support any kind of detail lighting that I'm doing in this area. Then I can quickly do a production build of this volume of space, and of course, because all the other areas are kind of hidden and not visible to the environment, it only builds the lighting in this area here. So it takes, you know, a couple of minutes to build the lighting in this area without having to build the complex lighting for the rest of the space that I'm not really working on. And of course, I go to bed, I could set this up, and so everything's turned on, and do a complete build. So getting on to that block volume, let's go over here and let's see if we can highlight these here. Okay, so these are the collision volumes that are done edit in place, and to kind of see how they are constructed, let's see if we can just quickly turn that on. Details, rendering visibility, there you go, visible. Okay, there you go. You can see that this would be one of those blue boxes that you saw in the other environment. So this is actually the surface that contains the collision information. I got some tidying up to do here, because the collision is actually intruding into the door space that it no longer needs to occupy. But that's an easy update, which I'll, you know, if interested, maybe I could do an entire episode on collision construction, what is available to you, and how you can make use of it for different purposes. But going back to the idea that I do like using prefabricated assets. The problem I have with it is everything generally contains some form of collision. Now, now this is not necessarily a bad thing, but on the whole, I have discovered that too much collision surfaces can lay waste to your performance. It doesn't decrease the things like the frame rate, the refresh or whatever, but it just feels like your player is moving through mud every time you take a step. It doesn't have that snappiness that it should be doing. Instead, it just feels that you're moving in slow motion. So I found that by going through and removing all the collision and then make a simplified collision mesh for that space, because as I pointed out, I just move everything over to 3D Max, so I can use that to define the volume of space that I need to fill within the editor, and then edit either the object as a map object or in place as to referencing the environment to begin with. So you can see, for example, this door over here takes up a lot more space that needs to be corrected. That where the collision information needs to be adjusted for that change in the design where it goes it doesn't go zigzag out anymore. It just goes straight down, because I wanted less sticking into the map and more of the geometry up against the wall, which that will prevent the player, like for example, if they're running backwards, I don't want them to get hooked up on that little lip. You know, a lot of players tend to use the wall as kind of a railgun run thing, where they just go up against the back wall and they just run through. So they should be able to run clear into this space in here without getting hooked up onto the geometry. So, you know, so that has to be taken into account. So if we actually go to the collision block number 6, and we'll highlight that, you can see here, over here, come on, over here is the one-sided collision information. Now this is pretty similar to creating auto surfaces in Radiant. The problem with that is it surfaces both sides of the object and every face as to encompassing the environment, regardless of the surface that is actually required to act as collision. In this case, what we can do is just create the box volume, and for collision we can use complex collision as simple, and now we have a volume that has collision onto it. So here we have, if we hover, collision prism, sections with collision 1. Okay, so we do have a collision that has been established on it. But if we go ahead and hit play, it's this bit of collision that keeps us within the space. So if we're running against the wall, we have that railgun effect. And of course, we're getting Z-buffer fighting, because the collision is mapped right over the floor. So we have a 1-to-1 correspondence as to the floor surface as well as to the collision that's been applied to it. Okay, so what we need to do, though, to finish this off, is you have to turn off cast shadow. Otherwise, you'll get all these weird blotches all over the place, because your collision wall, which is usually slightly inside your geometry, is casting shadows onto it, and you'll get these places where you're going to get some really weird types of splotching effect going on. And then all we would have to do is we would leave actor hidden in game, would leave that unselected, because we want it to react to the player colliding to it, but we want to make it invisible. And ta-da, our entire volume has this space here has one single collision object that covers this entire area here. What that does is it decreases the total number of collision objects that would normally be contained in a space here. So you would have, for example, this window here would have collision, this window here would have collision, this window here would have collision, the glass would have collision, I'm talking about the frame, of course. This pillar here would have collision, and this up here would have collision, and the roof and the ceiling would have collision, collision. And a little bit worse than that, it would be double-sided, because it has to kind of cover the entire surface. And of course, if you wanted to, you could certainly select it and add simplified complex collision to it. But of course, you have collision on both sides. So by creating a tub, so to speak, eventually the entire environment would also contain its own envelope as to how much that area is covered. So we actually decrease the amount of collision information rather than we're increasing it. So like, for example, this will run in here, has its own little collision mesh, top to bottom. Needs a little bit of modification too, as well as I'm making changes. Easy to update. I also found that another reason why I would want to do it this way is the collision information on an object does not always update. You go, okay, or it just doesn't generate the collision at all. So you would have something that was concave versus convex and what have you, and it simply does not create a segment for that deviation. So you'd have a big hole in your collision geometry. This way, it's just the entire wall surfaces is just, hey, this is all collision, and it just creates the appropriate number of surfaces, which, as I mentioned, is generally less than would need to cover this entire environment. So that's I thought, in my experience, it's been a very positive way of obviously applying efficient collision that is used, and not something that is tucked away in behind and not used as to, say, a BSP surface that has to have more sides. So to cover this area here, for example, might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's say a total of 6 surfaces, where you can get that many surfaces from just either a single object, like a pipe, for example. Well, obviously a pipe we don't need collision onto it, but a surface would have, like this, if we did a typical collision surface onto this, you're talking at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 surfaces. So just on this one object equals the same amount of surface area that needs to cover this entire section in here as a simplified collision surface, and done in an efficient manner that fits this tubular type of effect. Okay, so just to kind of cover one more thing, I found was kind of cool, kind of a cool idea that I wanted to play with is all the doors in the environment starts closed, and some doors open and close based on how they operating in 4.x. But in this case, say if you're familiar with Orbital, we do know that this environment is kind of open as to doorways and direction changes. So how the map will initialize and will start is with all the doors closed. So when somebody comes along and they open the door, then the door opens and stays open for that particular section that would normally be open. So if we run down here, this door here would too also opening up that area. And you would travel through to this area over here, and the door would stay open. So now it's starting to look a little bit more, let's say, familiar. And I think that's just a, let's say, artistic prerogative. So of course during testing we'll figure that out if there is any, say, in-map ramifications during gameplay that we should keep the doors open where they're supposed to be open. Okay, so I think that pretty well much covers anything really of interest. My just kind of spinning around the map like this, it should give you a pretty good idea how far along we are. Oh, there is one thing I want to kind of show off, I guess, is power plant. Okay, this is once again, we got doorways that are usually covered in this area that's usually open, and how you would normally move into one area into the other. In this case, you probably recognize it. but it's changed a bit that it's a little bit difficult to see. Come on, open. And I got these these little weird power planty things that are going on, and of course as we move to one area into the other, the doors behind us stay open. Same over here. You know, during play testing we got to figure out if this area needs to be opened up a little bit or not. But this is a divider between the cargo area, and I guess we can call this the command center. And what I thought was kind of cool was our display here that it came with one of the asset packages that I bought. It actually kind of corresponds to what's going on over the other side here, but it also kind of suggests that there are additional let's see, motors located throughout the station. So that'd be kind of a theme in general. And of course I got like the cool holograph of well, I don't, it's planet Earth. But we can kind of pretend that that's that planet out there, and looking through the glass. If you're wondering a little bit about the skybox here, okay. First of all, I think the sunlight is an object, and the planet is an object that comes part of the kit. And of course, the actual skybox is the background from one of the samples that. The space bunker I get, if I remember right, is the skybox from that particular sample package. So it seemed to kind of worked out perfectly for this part of this conversion. The solar planes or whatever that are over here, that actually they need to be turned around, I guess, to match up with the sun coming in. So these solar cells here, or solar panels, they came from the same package. And there's a few other little goodies in that package that I'm going to make use of. For example, up here it has the countertop and a stove and a microwave, and I think the guys over at CMM made some vending machines. So I'm going to check them out and see if I can score one for Orbital here. And of course we got some beer. Are they beer? I don't know. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Okay, that more or less covers everything I guess I wanted to cover. Let's just say one last thing, is that, the rules of conversion is, as much as possible, the Easter eggs, or whatever you want to call them, should be maintained as to original artist credit. And so the little Missy here, Z-buffer fighting at the moment will probably stay part as part will have to stay part of the play here. I'm just happy that she's got some clothes on, because, well, Urban Terror is a PG rated game, and we're going to have to pull it back just so slightly so that it's still there, I guess, but is no longer Z-buffer fighting with whatever element's been put on top of it. So whatever we find, that kind of stuff, usually we just kind of leave it. So it means doing things like checking the bulletin board out, see if somebody's left an Easter egg there. And well, one thing for sure is that you can learn quite quickly where all the Easter eggs are. And so far, this is the only one I've been able to find. So if I'm in error, by all means, mention it, and I'll try to make it a point to put those taggings that are done back into where they're supposed to be. So anyways, check out our media dump. Some stuff, this is a pretty extended featurette, so to speak. So I'll be dumping this, of course, into the media dump pile as well. So the people that are not subscribed, of course, can just click on it there and get the latest info as to the official release of Orbital. Yay! And you can certainly feel free to add comments. I am of the mind that you know, you got to kind of listen to the people that have played this map to till till all hours of the night, have a better idea what they're looking at or what I might have missed. You know, so that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of zooming around here, so you can go, oh, wait a minute. Okay, guys, I'm getting a little gaga. It's pretty late for me, and as I mentioned, I'm getting a little bit of the hay feverish syndrome that I usually get this time of year when the weather is changing. So, anyways, enough rolling on, and happy days for Orbital being added to the rack, and I'll catch you in the next one. I do plan on doing a follow up on the character developer series. There seems to be some confusion as to how to make use of what is, first of all, what is Genesis 3, and also I want to get into our animation pipeline as to you know, how I've done all, like, a lot of the heavy lifting to get the animation in place, so that the coders have something to put into place. So, you know, when things start getting closer to the polish stage, I can then go in and quickly make any fine tuning and cleaning up of the messy that I made by just basically doing an animation dump. Okay, guys, catch you in the next one.